Welcome to Dexerto's The Jungle preview show presented by DJ Esports. Sign up on djesports.io to immediately participate in the World Prediction Series. Earn your deposit bonus for World Stage 2 using promo code DJEX50 for a 50% deposit bonus up to 200 USDT. You can also join the DJ Esports Discord for additional bonuses and incentives. As you heard, this is The Jungle, and we just wrapped up the quarterfinals of Worlds. Only 3 series left in all of 2021. The Western hopes have faded as LCK has dominated and LPL had themselves the best series in the quarterfinals. dGon, Dom, and Monte here to break down the action that happened this past weekend, extended weekend. It was like a celebration of hopium just popping into the air. Yeah, I just wanted to start off with generally, what did you guys think of the matches there, Dom?
Well, I think that they're pretty much like expected results. I think the stronger team just ended up winning every single one. I guess the only one that I think you could say would be an upset would be like, or potentially could be considered an upset would be EDG over RNG, simply because EDG was the second seed. So that was the only second seed that didn't advance. But yeah, I think it was just pretty standard. We got to see the standard LCK team beating LCK team and LPL team beating LPL team. So I always love that in the format where you go to Worlds and then you're guaranteed to just get all the regions just cannibalizing themselves. It's like just watching LPL Autumn and LCK Autumn and in the quarterfinals. I thought that was really nice.
Yeah, and I'm just glad we are guaranteed to have a Korean team in the finals once again. You know, we had it last year, but the previous 2 years, G2 managed to kill a bunch of Korean teams before they actually got to the finals. So we instead had very one-sided China versus Europe affairs. So you know, the format is questionable still. Obviously, like, actually sucks that RNG, we're not going to get to see them play against any of the Korean teams or anyone else at all, because there is no lower bracket for teams to go into. And instead we got a matchup between two LPL teams, which those LPL versus LPL matchups at Worlds always end up being a little bit weird. The games end up being a little bit different. The teams play differently for whatever reason when they're in those scenarios. And so I just wish we would have been able to see a best of 5 between RNG and literally any other team that wasn't an LPL team. I really wish we could have seen that. I don't wish that we could have seen the Hanwha Life team in a best of 5 against any other team, though. So I guess it's kind of a mixed blessing in the end, because Hanwha Life really only got this far because of Fnatic's implosion, in my opinion. And so I'm glad to be done with them. I'm glad to be done with them.
Yeah, I mean, I think that might have been the worst best of 5 that I've ever watched at Worlds. I can't remember being less hype for a best of 5, besides for like season 3 where you'd have like a random team. Wasn't it like Gamma Bears or some shit? Like,
yeah,
a team
Gamma
like
Bears.
that. Yeah,
I think you're forgetting H2K versus Albus Nox Luna.
Oh yeah, I mean that one, but at least for me, at least that one had like a little bit of hype because Albus Nox, I think they outplaced what, CLG and G2. Was that who they ended up outplacing in the same group? So like at least they beat teams that were supposed to be good from the West. So it's like, oh shit, if you're better than G2, G2 is better than H2K. Maybe there's a shot there. This felt like it just felt completely unwinnable. I couldn't see a world where T1 actually lost to HLE. And I know that sounds weird to a lot of people that are going to tell me, oh, but in the gauntlet, like it was a 3-2. Well, that should have been a 3-0 anyway. So I don't really take that into consideration when I saw the strength of these teams coming into the best of 5.
It was also, you know, based on a different meta and based on different form. This meta is really terrible for Morgan. Right. So, you know, in a top carry meta, in a very jungle focused meta, I think that it really didn't fall into the advantage of Hanwha at all. Because in spite of Deft like doing pretty well over the course of the tournament, you know, we've seen great ADC performances like Hansama with Rogue, and that didn't actually translate into going very far. So I mean, that hasn't been the biggest factor.
What I would say is that, you know, it might be a terrible meta for Morgan, but I'd say that any time that Morgan plays, it's a terrible meta for the viewing experience of the tournament. So, you know what? I think it's just fair.
I'm glad to have him gone. I'm sad Fnatic didn't have their full roster because they would have been much more entertaining to watch. So in a way, though, Hanwha Life, they were frauds. They got into the quarterfinals fraudulently in a fraudulent fashion, and were exposed. And yeah, that best of 5 was very special.
The Morgan meta just doesn't exist.
That was really boring, really one-sided. Made me sad that I woke up at 4:45 a.m. to watch it. They didn't do any. I mean, I was half asleep, and so were Hanwha Life. It turns out they just didn't do anything at all in any of the games.
I mean, what I would say is the crazy part of it is that Morgan somehow wasn't even the worst player on his team. Like Willer, I think, had the worst series possible for a jungler. Like, I don't know how you could play any worse. I think his scoreline was like 0-12-1. And he was playing things that have like early game ages. It's like this guy was playing something where he can't play the game early. And it's like, oh, well, I just didn't get to scale, bro, or like some shit like that. No, like he was playing like, what did he play? Xin? Did he play 2 games of Xin? He played champions that should be able to be active early. And he just wasn't able to do anything with it.
It was a massive scoreline as well. I think at the end of the series, LoL Esports put out just the stats of the series, just like how much gold they're up at 15, how many towers were taken, how many barons were taken, how many dragons were taken, and it was lopsided, almost like where it felt like major region, minor region. And Monte, at least we could say that both the LCK and the LPL play differently when they played against each other, because in the LCK, right, when it came to was it playoffs, Hanwha Life, they pushed T1 3-2. This time they just go out 3-0. So it was at least a little bit different in this time in this matchup. It was a dominant performance by T1 to just smack them around. Did we learn anything from T1?
No. Like the problem is that there was such a lack of agency from Hanwha that it is really, really hard to say what we learned. I think that T1 played exactly how we've expected them to play from the information we have in the group stage, which is that Faker is playing a significantly more supportive role overall with the team. They knew the main threat was Chovy, so he's playing Aftershock Lissandra into LeBlanc. He's basically just sacrificing his wave to walk through the enemy jungle, place pink wards down, and play towards bot side and get Gumayusi on Aphelios ahead. We saw Gumayusi on Aphelios. He's played that 7 games out of their 9 so far. Gumayusi has still only died 3 times in 9 games, so he dies once every 3 games on average. In fact, the fewest deaths of this event so far at Worlds, 5 of the 6 players in fewest deaths are the 5 members of T1. And the 6th is Light from LNG, who played 2 fewer games. So it's been incredibly clean. Like 11 deaths from Owner is the most deaths that we've seen from T1, but they just get their way. And I think it's interesting to see I like the way T1 is playing, but eventually they're going to hit an opponent, and that opponent is Damwon, who can actually do things in the early game and contest them. And I think that it's asking a lot from players like Kana and a 17-year-old player like Owner to go up against Canyon and Khan. And so despite all of the advantages, T1's road has been pretty easy overall, and they've gotten away with playing TF and Lissandra in the mid lane, which they may still be able to get away with. I think the threat of Faker is like, he can do other things. They've just been playing this way to power up their side lanes, and it's been working, so why stop?
Yeah. I mean, I think the thing that I would say there is just their strength of schedule has just been like terribly easy compared to anyone else. I mean, they had Hanwha Life, which I think was even worse than Cloud9. Like, I think Hanwha Life actually did nothing for the
I said coming into the corners that this was the biggest gap. Like, this was going to be the biggest stomp. And people were saying, oh no, it's going to be, it's going to be Dom1 versus Mad Lions. I'm like, no, you guys don't understand how bad Hanwha Life is and how well T1's playing right now. This was the biggest gap.
Yeah, and then they also got like the group with the LJL team as well. So I feel like T1 hasn't, like, they had 2 games against EDG, and I feel like those are the only 2 games you can really look at and be like, okay, what was actually exposed by what they did. I mean, I'll say that we did learn one thing about T1, which is their Herald rotations are like not clean all the time. Like, I think they should have straight up lost one of the games at one of the Herald rotations where they just started Herald in the enemy team's face, and then the enemy team just like, I mean, yeah, Hanwha Life just botches the fight as bad as possible. They end up winning the fight, winning the Herald. But I think that we did get to see like some mistakes there. I don't think any team looked flawless in their quarterfinal matches. I mean, T1's obviously the closest one, but I saw moments in those games where it's like, if you do this Herald rotation versus Dom1, Dom1's going to punish you. Like, you will lose a game off this going forward. So I think that that's like the interesting thing is now every team has kind of bled a little, where before I thought Dom1 really hadn't been challenged. I mean, they had like one kind of late game throw against Rogue. Outside of that, they had been pretty much stomping everyone that they played. And even versus Matt, I mean, I think that they should have definitely lost at least the game 2 versus Matt, if not the game 3 as well.
Yeah. Again, just kind of, I like the way that you put it there, Dom. Every team kind of bled a little bit to show their faults, even though our whole quarterfinals were pretty clean from our LCK teams with 3-0s. If you just look at this, the score line and the stats, you're like, oh, okay, well, they were clearly the better team, but now with the step up in competition, there's no more cupcakes. We'll have to see where those small cracks really turn into crevices when they play against tougher competition. Anything else from the T1 on the live series? Because I feel like there just wasn't just a ton for us to take away from it other than like,
look,
it sucked waking up that early.
I liked some of the decisions that T1 was making. I think that they are very calculated in terms of their win conditions. I think that they, like I said, they play to their opponents in a very interesting way. And Faker is very selfless this tournament. He is the lowest percentage gold of any mid laner at this tournament so far. And so he's playing a high impact, low resource style that is powering up Gumayusi and Kana. And whether they can continue that against world-class teams is the big question, I think. But if your game plan is neutralize Chovy, then that's, we know Faker's not limited to doing that. He is arguably the worst mid laner among the Korean teams at this tournament. I think that's not too controversial overall. So I think he knows that. And that's why they've decided to play the way that they're playing. But it is effective, and it is very, very different than anyone else has been doing. And I like some of, like in the third game versus Hanwha, they made an interesting decision to like just give away First Dragon and Herald. And they've been doing a lot of like pretty early top rotations with their bot lane to try and push objectives. But, they traded that for a lot of plate gold, those objectives, and they just played to their win conditions and knew that they had better control of the map and better team fighting later on. And it really worked out. I mean, they stomped them. So I think that they have good game plans and communication going in, and they are making decisions based around that align with their win conditions. So I'm excited to see them against that one.
Yeah, definitely a hype matchup. I think that's an interesting point there, Monte, just because when I feel like a team wants to play for later, they would be doing the dragon stacking. But I guess if you can accelerate your team getting to later by picking up the gold, because you don't necessarily get gold, you get the bonus stats from the first Drake, then that is a way to help you get there later. So that's a pretty cool point.
Yeah, I mean, and they've been very good in the early game. They're up an average of 3,000 gold at 15 minutes. But in spite of that, I don't feel like they're one-dimensional or they're pressing too hard on the early game. I think we saw in that series that they're willing to make some early sacrifices if the time's not right for the fight. So I think it's interesting. In fact, they only take First Dragon 44% of the time, so they really haven't been focused on it that much in spite of their bot lane priority.
Right. All right. Well, I guess we'll dive into T1 in their matchup a little bit later. Next up, this was the Saturday matchup. It was the all LPL affair. It was LPL royalty. It was EDG and RNG. RNG coming in as MSI champions, trying to go for the double MSI and Worlds, but were cut short in a 3-2 brawly type battle. EDG making it out of the quarterfinals for the first time in franchise history. They had previously failed 4 times before. And so now they'll have at least one opportunity to go at least a step further, and might, a lot of people should think they're favorited over Gen.G. But let's dive into that series. Dom, I'll send it over to you first. Our LPL eyes on the ground. What did you see in that matchup between RNG and EDG?
Well, I mean, obviously the Annie pick from Crying, I mean, they really double down on his style, which is something that, like,
honestly,
I think
applause for that. That's like smart.
Yeah,
he's a bad player, but you know, they made lemonades out of lemons. You know, you can't
the thing
fault
is, like,
them.
I mean, I kind of can fault them, at least from my perspective, because I don't think that, like, Cryan actually was as bad as now I think the team believes he is. Like, it seems like the rest of the team has just lost complete confidence in him ever playing a carry. And now he's in a situation where it's like, you're either playing Galio, Rise, TF, or Annie in that order every game. If you don't play it, we're just like FFing pretty much. And if you remember at MSI, like, he was nowhere close to as negatively viewed by the community. I mean, in the finals for ShowMaker, he actually stood up to ShowMaker. It wasn't like ShowMaker just was dicking him the entire fucking series. He was just behind in every lane, just getting shit on, and then wasn't able to do stuff. Like, Cryan actually played pretty well. I think that he overperformed expectations in that series. So I feel like Cryan is better than his team believes he is. And now he's just on this role. And I don't even know if that's only him or if it's just compensating for the fact that in general, it seems like RNG doesn't function unless they have a roaming mid laner.
That sounds accurate to me. And now, I guess, with that analysis, kind of backs up what ShowMaker said after the Cloud9 series against Perkz. He was like, yeah, Cryan's better than Perkz in lane. And everyone laughed at it. But I guess if you think about it, you know, I guess the last time
he didn't say in lane, he said the weakest. He was facing the weakest mid laner. And by the way, that was just a clap back from what Perkz said in a Cloud9 video. So it was definitely a response to what Perkz had said about BDD. But I mean, I just don't think that's true because Cryan wasn't making game-winning plays, and Perkz, that's what he does, right? He provides that power to the team. So Cryan also isn't expected to make game-winning plays. In fact, they probably don't want him to make game-winning plays based on what they have him do or the strengths of his that they try and activate. But look, I think overall, like the Predator Annie was unique. I think it did offer some things. It won them a game. It forced a ban. But I think if you're getting that ban, like people overstate the importance of drawing that ban because it's just not worth it to play against that bullshit, you know? So if they have the luxury, if EDG has the luxury of banning that Annie and still winning, then that's totally fine. Like they, you know, there's not a big deal in that.
But I mean, shouldn't it be on the other members of RNG to be able to pick up the slack? Like if Cryan is eating so many bans, like shouldn't other people be enabled to hard carry these fucking games? That's kind of my...
We could ask the same thing about the Cloud9 games. We could ask the same thing about the Cloud9 games where they dumped a bunch of bans onto Perkz, and C9 couldn't actually deliver even in a game where they were massively ahead. But, you know, look, I'm happy to see RNG go out, even though I would like to see them play some more best of fives. And if there was a losers bracket, I would be able to watch those. But I think in this scenario, I just have a lot more faith in EDG versus the remainder of the field than I would against RNG. Yeah, I think EDG will produce better matches against the remaining teams in the tournament.
Yeah, I agree with that. I have a question for you though. Who would you have in a best of 5 right now, Gen.G or RNG?
Ooh,
maybe RNG actually. I mean, I have very little faith in Gen.G, so.
I'm happy that everyone hates Gen.G. You know, like, I mean, they're just a team. I swear if they get to finals, it's going to be the toughest finals to watch ever.
Oh, it'll be horrible.
I mean,
that's why I'm really hoping EDG makes it, because I think EDG will not be the favorite, but I think that they can win games. Whereas if Gen.G somehow gets into the finals, I think they just get destroyed by either Dom1 or T1. I mean,
EDG can massively overperform expectations. We literally saw it in LPL finals. There was not one person you could ask, well, at least not one person that I asked, that thought that EDG was actually going to beat FPX. I mean, FPX 6-0'd playoffs. They hadn't lost the game in playoffs before that finals. And then obviously, FPX ended up losing to EDG there, and EDG had good prep. So I feel like EDG is probably, I don't know. I mean, I guess we'll have to see. T1 is looking good, but I have a feeling that EDG might play Dom1 better than T1 will.
Possibly, yeah. I mean, if we're gonna talk about like Gen.G and the matchup between EDG or with EDG in the semifinals, I think that it's that is just a very bad stylistic matchup for Gen.G, because you saw a lot of the weakness of Gen.G in the games that they played with Cloud9, because even when they were winning, they were still like flipping Barons in the late game and doing Gen.G things. And like, I think anyone would say like game 3 should have been a Cloud9 win. Like Cloud9 should have been able to snowball that lead. And the thing about EDG is that they tend to play a lot more cautiously in the early game and like conservatively, and then they're reliant on their excellent team fighting in the mid and late game. And I feel like Gen.G, even though they've been good at getting advantages, you have to look at some of their wins. They've been, like I said, flipping Baron and getting it. That's risky. You've had insane plays by BDD, which we saw in the third game against Cloud9, or in the game that they played against Team Liquid in groups, where BDD basically just managed to claw back the game by using the Zoe. And I think
by
that
mind controlling Zven to not use
Yes.
summoners or walk next to the wall. Like the thing that I hate about this is like people will always just say that it comes off like super negative, but the issue with BDD making those plays is that he should never actually have the opportunity to make those plays, assuming that the team knows what Zoe does and just doesn't position right over a wall where he's just able to fire skill shots over. I mean, maybe in that situation, the Cosmic Drive is just the best second item possible for the Zoe there. Because I think that item is trash, and I think that trash in that situation. I think the way that C9 played into it was just super weird. Like, they can win almost any fight that actually gets engaged, but they just sat there and let Zoe poke them until they lost fights. So I think my biggest issue when I watch Gen.G is I just feel like I feel really bad that none of the teams have been able to like adequately punish them.
Yes. That's what I'm saying, is that there are so many, like you see their wins and you just get disappointed because you know that their gameplay is so flawed and that they're reliant on either individual big plays by BDD or like random chance on major objectives, or not having the proper amount of control to do objectives realistically and just making arbitrary calls. And you just have to believe that eventually that luck is going to run out. And I think
EDG can be the team to do that, right? That's where
EDG, look, their weaknesses play into EDG's strengths, is my point. Like EDG, it likely will not be making those same mistakes that other teams make, because that's their strong suit. So I would say this is stylistically a very good matchup for EDG. So I would be shocked if they lost.
When we think about, I feel like we didn't have to ask this too much about Hanwha Life, but when we think about RNG, which was, I think, less favored in this matchup against EDG, how would you, Dom, look at RNG's year? How would you look at it as a year ending 3-2 in the quarterfinals against EDG, one of the best teams left in the tournament?
I mean, I think it's pretty tragic because, like, it doesn't even feel like you really, like, it feels like everything that lined up didn't put you in the position that you should be in. Like, I feel like getting first in the group and then having to play against EDG, I think EDG was by far the strongest second seed available. So the fact that not only is it like the strongest second seed, like the other options are Cloud9, Hanwha Life, and Mad, and you got EDG instead. I think that fucking sucks. I think that this is like my biggest issue, and this is why I always go off on tournament format, is because let's say EDG ends up winning or losing in finals, right? Let's say either of those things happen. You enter a world where RNG could have easily just been like the third best team in the whole tournament. Like, but you'll never actually know that. They get the same exit as Cloud9 and Mad Lions, which I feel like are much worse teams at this current moment. Like, I feel like Mad Lions and C9 had positions in that game that RNG would not lose. Like in both their series, I feel like if you give RNG those opportunities, RNG is just not going to lose those games. Like you can't int that hard into a team like RNG, where I felt like Mad and C9 just, they couldn't like get over like the mental hump of like, okay, we're actually going to need to play well to end this game. They kind of just want to like be like, we're ahead, guys. Just let us win. Like, let us, like, they're not able to like deal with the turmoil or the enemy team like actually doing things correctly in the team fights and having to exert their lead over the enemy to actually get the win. They're normally used to teams collapsing against them. And I think that, we saw that with FPX. I think FPX collapsed into C9. I think we've seen that with almost every team that C9's beat. Like TSM did the same thing. They also had that like random Jarvan pick and stuff. I mean, it's really weird how how TSM would play from behind. It felt like they almost get panicked. And when you watch Gen.G and you watch Dom1, it feels like those teams don't get as panicked. Like they'll make mistakes, but if they get to those situations, they're like, hey, we're gonna play this situation even if we're at a deficit the best we possibly can. Where a lot of other teams don't have that discipline. That it's like somebody on the team, it like over engages or somebody gets caught or they get poked too much, and then you just get a free situation that, yeah, you're just not getting here at Worlds.
Yeah, those teams were lacking a killer instinct, and I guess those Western teams were also struggling against teams that had resiliency and creativity in ways that they tried to get back. Even that Rogue series, it was, you have it, no, you have it, no, you have it, until eventually Cloud9 took that one. All right, let's move on to the next series. And this was the DWG KIA against Mad Lions. The European champs slide on through. They get the toughest draw. And people were saying, maybe a dark horse here, but obviously DWG going to take the series. Even on the analyst desk, no one could really say it for real, like they were going to take a win. And they were in a lot of those games. Again, this is one of the series where you look at the 3-0 and it's like, that didn't feel like the 3-0 that we saw on Friday where T1 just steamrolled Hanwha Life, Chovy Life Esports. Mad Lions found a way in multiple different games and they just weren't able to close it out here, Monte.
I have a question for Dom. Does Dom1 win Worlds without losing a game? Because that's a real possibility now.
Oh, absolutely not. Absolutely not. I think they definitely lose games. I don't think that Dom1 actually played as well in this series as I thought. Like they did a lot of really sketchy things. That I just don't see them being able to get away with.
They were also incredibly reliant on Canyon having maybe the best like Lee Sin series of all time. I think like that. I don't think that's an exaggeration. I think if you look at a singular Lee Sin performance in a best of 5, like it's possible that you could put Canyon up there on this one. I think a lot of the plays he was making in the mid to late game and the angles he was finding saved them a lot of the time.
I agree with that if you only take his highs. If you take his highs and compare them to like other Lee Sin highs, I would say yes. If you take like the overall body of his play and then you consider like what he was doing topside early game until Yoya in game 2, like, I mean, he really ran it down in that game in the early game. And I think that type of stuff, it's hard for me to go to like the level of like, you are the best. That was the best Lee Sin series of all time when those moments exist within the series. I just think that there's times where I'm sure if you go back through history, I mean, like things that jump out to me would be like TN's Lee Sin against G2 in finals where they 3-0'd. Like I think that was more consistent. There wasn't many bad plays from TN compared to like the bad plays of Canyon. But I'd say that Canyon's like good plays were out of this world. I mean, it's so hard to play Lee Sin from behind. That's the thing that people don't understand is that Lee Sin, it's not that Lee Sin is a super early game champion that scales like shit. It's just that like you have to be extremely good at Lee Sin to be able to find those angles in fights and just have the team fight vision to pick your moments, because there's so many different things in those series that he's looking to play around, and he needs certain abilities to be down. He needs other people to be taking pressure off of him so that he's kind of like forgotten in a certain situation. He can find the angle, he can find the kick. And yeah, I think that he was really, really patient and he picks his times super well. And the thing that I always appreciate about Canyon, just watching it, is it feels like every time there's like the defining moment of the game, he is always playing those situations perfectly. So he'll have like bad moments here and there, but like always in the crucial parts of the game, he is the best player in the game, which I feel like is so difficult to do consistently. And yeah, I think that that's what he proved in this series.
Yeah, the touch factor.
Yeah, I also think that this was a very. I think this series is interestingly going to define a lot of the semifinal and final meta, in that the Syndra Lee Sin combo I think was revealed to be really dominant. Syndra has like a 70% win rate right now at Worlds, and I believe we talked about this on the last show, but it was like we talked about that likely the instances of TF bans were going to be going up in the quarterfinals, and they did. It was pretty universally banned throughout the quarterfinals, and I think that as people have keyed in or honed in on powerful mid lane pickups, like the Syndra has become the next best available offering. But there's been so much playmaking and setup in the early games around the Syndra Lee Sin skirmishes that has been really effective for the teams that have been running it. And I think like this can't be allowed, like Domlin can't be allowed to continue playing this way. You have to take these tools away, I think.
I think what's funny is Syndra as a pick was nerfed pretty hard, and it went from when it was nerfed originally, it was pretty much must ban if you're on red side, because not only before the nerfs where the Q went from 40 to 60 mana, not only was it good mid lane into pretty much every matchup. I mean, there was like some fringe picks like Echo that could go even in lane and then maybe outperform in team fights, or it was like hard for Syndra to kill it because of the ulti. They could rush Merc Treads, whatever. But the general like consensus is that Syndra is just a broken champion, because even in those matchups, they're like 50-50 matchups that maybe Syndra gets outscaled in, but Syndra's going to have like early lane prio. And then they just reverted the Q to pretty much what it was in that state. Like after the original nerfs, everyone forgot it. Then it was buffed, and it was pretty much just back to the original Syndra. And people were like, no, it's not that good. Like everything's changed. It's a different season. It's season 11. Like the items aren't as good. And then as time has progressed, it's like, wait, it's just as fucking broken as it was back then. It's not a flex anymore. Like, it probably still could be a flex, to be honest. Like, if a bot laner was a really exceptional Syndra player, I'm sure it could actually be flexed.
It was technically a flex for Xiaohu, but
yes,
that was a fringe circumstance.
Yes. It was a flex for Xiaohu. That's for sure. But I mean, I just think that this champion is just really fucking strong, and it doesn't have bad matchups. Like, what do you want to play that's in the meta right now into Syndra? I mean, maybe you just play like, we saw Silas. We saw Perkz play Silas. That's something that should be okay if you're going to do that whole like lose lane gracefully type play style, but didn't work out. It just feels like the ability to set things up for your jungler is just way too OP, and having perma lane pressure in, you know, a meta that's revolving around the crabs just like it was before is a very, very broken condition in the game.
Yeah, it's 10-3 right now. So been picked in 13 games. So 10-3 overall. So 77% win rate right now. Looking really strong. Now, part of that is it's been picked by the teams that are winning, but
I mean, it was also picked by Perkz yesterday, like in game 3, and they should have won that game.
Yeah, they should have won that game. Yeah,
like,
yes, I think
that's
you
a
did
Syndra
see
win.
the power of it.
Yeah, in the that I count that as a Syndra win.
In the Dom adjusted wins column, Syndra is actually 11-2 and not 10-3. So
yes, exactly. I just go with like freak logic.
Put it in the 80s.
Like what I learned during MSI is that actual like stats and logic don't apply. You can just say whatever you want and just arbitrarily add and take away wins depending on, you know, the way the wind is blowing on the day. So I'm gonna start doing that. You know, technically I have 37 points in pick'ems, but in my world, I actually got every single prediction correctly.
Yeah, so he knows how many points that is. So it's just all of them.
If you limit the predictions to the ones he got right, he has 100% accuracy. That's how it works.
What is the answer? What is an answer to Syndra? We saw that in that Mad Lion series, a humanoid went to Victor. But what else could be an answer here to Syndra that is playable? Like, is it just play Ori, play safe, and don't get blown up?
So there's one pick that people used to like into it, which is Yone, which a lot of people were predicting to be something that showed up more in Worlds. Like I know Apto is saying that Yone being buffed for Worlds was a huge buff to Chovy because he considers Chovy to be the best Yone player in the world. We haven't seen it yet, but that's something that was on the table. I remember this massive pop-off game from earlier this year where Chovy was playing Yone. I think it was into BDD Syndra. He was like 10-1 or something at 19 minutes. Absolute pop-off game. It's a fucking highlight reel. If you're watching right now, bring it up in another tab. You can just have like a quick eyegasm watching Chovy's Yone and then come back and finish the video. But like, that's a pick that is kind of in that same range. I think that there's a couple different ways that people approach it. Either you go the humanoid route where you draft like another control mage that should lose lane that scales better and can maybe do a little bit better in the lane phase. We saw the Orianna from humanoid did not work at all into the Syndra. I mean, ShowMaker just dicked him in that lane. It was just player gap.
We did see this matchup one time already in Gen.G's loss to Team Liquid when BDD picked up the Yone into Jensen Syndra. But that game was a kind of just shit show from minute one. So
yeah. Yeah, and then also like it's kind of weird because I feel like you almost need to have a Kennen in that game in order to like you need a Kennen in general with Yone. Because
Right.
all the junglers are pretty much AD right now that are being picked. I mean, sure, you can pick things like Fiddle or Karthus. I don't think any of these junglers are going to start picking those champs. So essentially, you need to have a Kennen top, or you could just try a Ziggs, which is kind of what Cloud9 tried yesterday. That's another option. But yeah, I would say that like Sylas, Echo, Yone, these are the types of champions that people might pick. If not that, I think you could maybe go like the Zir route where you concede losing lane, but you will like outscale eventually. I think that's the potential options we have.
Cool. Yeah, I love watching the meta continue to evolve, especially in this mid lane that I feel like was stagnant for a little while. It was very much help your other lanes out, use tempo, and get your top lane snowball and get your probably help with the jungle and snowball. But now it's more back to playmaking mid. And this is going to be a lot of fun to watch if the teams start evolving to that level. And we'll also have to keep an eye on the Kennen, because the Kennen was banned, picked and banned every game in the Cloud9 series. And looking forward to seeing Rascal on it and knowing that Khan can play it as well. That'll be a priority pick, I think, moving forward in the top lane after you get rid of the first couple. All right, Mad Lions. What do we feel about what they accomplished?
I just feel like Carzzy doesn't have the level. You know, you got Alyoya and Kaiser trying to carry the team. And if it was up to me, I would have just put Flockhead in there to round everything out. But I don't have really control of these decisions. XD wheelchair remote.
For those of you that don't know. Okay, yeah, all right. For those of you that don't know, I was watching Monte's face and I was like, Monte doesn't know.
I'm old.
Right.
I'm not hip with the memes.
Oh, he doesn't know. He doesn't know.
This is less of a meme.
The
This is
critical
more of
information.
This is more drama. LEC providing the drama this year. Owner.
It wasn't an owner. It was just an idiot. A Mad Lions idiot. Yes.
Who thinks he's the
A
owner?
Mad Lions content creator who put the title owner in his name, said something about Carzzy popping off, used a wheelchair remote to describe Carzzy. And then Mad Lions had to put out a statement saying this person's not an owner of our organization, doesn't speak for us. And Carzzy took the highest of high roads, and just said, "Hey, I don't care what this person says. I'm proud of our team." Blah blah blah. It was good for Carzzy, but just like crazy, because it's like, imagine if Jack or Steve just shit on Perkz or Jensen right after their game. It'd just be like, I don't know why they're in there. It was a pretty wild 24 hours.
I mean, for me, I just don't necessarily believe that, because you had this guy just walking around calling himself the Mad Lion owner. It was in his Twitter bio, and no one from Mad Lions was like, "Hey, bro, by the way, you don't own the team." Is he really just not an owner at all? And he was just calling himself the owner for a long period of time, and then no one bothered to confront him until there was this drama. And now they're like, actually, he's not an owner. What the fuck? It doesn't make sense to me. I feel like if I was calling myself the owner of Cloud9 publicly on my streams and on Twitter, C9 would probably contact me and be like, "Yeah, you should probably take that shit down. I don't know if you understand what our contract says, but you are literally just paid to be a content creator. You have no ownership at all of this company." I feel like they would talk to me. So that seems really sketchy for Mad Lions, that they just have a content creator pretending to be an owner, but apparently he's not an owner at all. I just don't buy it. It makes no sense to me.
I think it was unfortunate for Carzzy at this event, because we ended up seeing a meta that I don't think suits him very well as an AD carry, which was a bummer. I think he is really bad at Aphelios. But here's the thing about Carzzy. He's never been good at Aphelios. He lost every Aphelios game that he played last year. So this has just been a weakness of his. And at a certain point, I think you kind of have to put it on the coaches. The problem is he is a good Ezreal player, right? And there are things that you can do with him, but they're kind of fringe meta things, I would say, right now. And so it's tough, because what were your choices? I think if you are Mad Lions and you're approaching this game, you're dealing with, okay, Humanoid may be underperforming a little bit compared to what we saw in the LEC, but we need to prioritize one of our other lanes. And is that lane going to be our bot lane, or is it going to be Armut? And I think that's kind of it's a shitty choice to have to make. And if you, and it's not that shitting on Armit necessarily, but I think the meta just like slapped Mad Lions around quite a bit. And I think that if you're looking at Armit and his champion pool and what he's comfortable on, you were always going to have to put someone on a pick they weren't really comfortable with. And they chose Carzzy as opposed to Armit. And maybe that's a good choice considering how new Armit is to this level of competition, perhaps. You could make that argument. But they had to do something, and somebody was going to be on a champion they weren't super good at, and that was Carzzy. And I think if you have to make that choice, it makes sense because you hope that you can you'll hope that Aphelios can get strong in the late game. You hope that with Kaiser's help and with some jungle help, he'll be able to survive the laning phase and still be effective. You want to play top lane perhaps a little bit more conservatively because it's more volatile than the bottom lane matchup. And so I understand why the decision they made, like what the decision was, but also Carzzy was really bad as Aphelios in some of those team fights. So,
yeah.
But I don't think there was my question would be like, well, what happens if they put Armit on like some of the more meta picks? Like, is that the result we're really looking for here? Like we could have just be shitting on Armit instead would be my point.
Yeah. I mean, I think that my issue with Mad Lions is not only just a Carzzy issue. I think it's just the bot lane in general didn't adapt well to this meta. I think that Mad Lions had a lot of like the same underperformance that happened to the Chinese teams where they essentially play no fucking enchanters the entire year. Their strength is playing Kaiser on like Nautilus, like Rel earlier, Leona, like these types of picks. Kaiser has never been this like good mid-range player. He normally is good at finding like all in angles and kills in lane and setting up like kills and roams in the mid game and then engaging team fights. But he's not the type of player that's really good at like slowly winning out a lane where you chip, like you get a trade, you win that trade. Okay, now you have an advantage. The next trade you use to like force them out of lane. You're trying to play for like forcing them to recall, early timing on moves, things like that. It just feels like he's not that type of player. And I feel like none of the LPL supports were really those types of players. Either I know Iwandi was originally an enchanter player, but this year he was essentially just an engaged player the entire time. So I feel like the reason we saw all these teams underperform is they were playing the same type of style, and it just turns out that at Worlds, I don't know what the fuck happened in scrims, where Yuumi just became the best pick in the entire fucking game. And apparently there's no counter to it in the world outside of another enchanter, which is Lulu. I remember people saying that Yuumi was unplayable because you just pick an engage support and you just dive it on cooldown and there was nothing you could do. I don't know what happened to that logic. I mean, maybe Yuumi is just so OP. The bop and block buff came in, and now Yuumi cannot be dove anymore. Everyone was correct before, and they're still correct now. But it's just a patch 1 or 11.18 diff for a lot of these teams. So I just wanted to put that in there, that I think that the whole bot lane kind of underperforms because this isn't their playstyle. And then also, Mad Lions has never been the type of team where they want to play within Aphelios. Like, not only is Carzzy not great at positioning, but the team is not great around playing like around their AD carry as a main carry of the fight. I mean, that's why he was playing Kai'Sa. That's why he was playing Ezreal, because he needs to be able to either go in with his team or peel for himself. There's no like, okay, team is like, peeling for him and baiting out cooldowns, and they're aware of his positioning at all times, and they play on a yo-yo with their AD carry so that they know that he can always damage if they're engaging. Like, that's just not how Mad Lions normally plays. So I think the meta really hurt them, and what like the overall shape of it was in quarterfinals just didn't suit Mad Lions' strength as a bot lane.
I guess what surprises me is that we didn't see anything weird out of Mad Lions bot lane, which kind of has been their bread and butter. Why, or why didn't we see Carzzy playing Ziggs or something like that? I feel like there were other directions they could have gone that we didn't see.
Tristana, where's the Tristana? He played it like 4 times at MSI, and that was a champion that I remember him being okay on. Obviously, Kai'Sa is a little bit changed now because that's his most played champion, but even then, it just felt like going back to the well of Aphelios and knowing that, hey, you haven't played well on it. It just, I don't know. It didn't feel great, unless they were literally taking it away and that was part of the draft plan. But I wish, kind of like what Monte was saying, just see a little bit more out of this player that we know can be a difference maker and be self-sufficient. Misfortune doesn't feel self-sufficient. Like I remember on the broadcaster saying, "Oh, well, the movement speed allows him to dodge, allows a Misfortune player to dodge some of these engages." But that still feels very different than a Kaisa that can reposition and go invisible and ult away or give themselves a shield. The Ezreal that can shift backwards, the Tristana that can jump out of the way. Like that didn't feel necessarily like, I think, the way Carzzy plays and the way that you describe these team fights here, Dom.
Yeah, I also think that they were very prescient, or Dom1 was very prescient in the way that they approached this pick ban phase, because his most successful champion at Worlds was Lucian, and Dom1 banned it twice on the red side. So they were clearly aware of Carzzy, and they took away a champion that he could have theoretically done better on. So I like that about them. It's just good planning, I think, from Dom1's side.
Last quick question on Mad Lions. Does this roster stay together, or do you make a move?
I mean, if I was Carzzy, I'm not fucking re-signing after that shit. Like, I mean, his value is probably really fucking high. I doubt Mad Lions is going to shell out the same amount of cash that he can probably get for another organization. You've got 2 titles. You've made it to quarterfinals of Worlds. I feel like this is the time where normally you fucking get paid in this business. Is, you know, that like, however, like, just the longevity of your career, and the chance that Mad Lions repeats and is just as strong and goes to Worlds, it seems like it's almost guaranteed now. Like, in people's eyes, they'll be like, of course Mad Lions is just going to return to LEC and be one of the best teams. I mean, look at what happened with G2 this year. I think in this business, the way it works, your time is so short that I think the smartest move is you just fucking take a payday. You take a payday and you try to just, you know, balance it with a team that you actually do believe in. And I think that there's definitely teams that could be created with Carzzy involved that could be really fucking good. I don't think there's like necessarily an issue where he can't find a team. I mean, what about Vitality? Vitality's apparently paying everyone out the ass. Imagine if there's a Vitality team with Perkz, Alfari, Selfmade. They're looking for a new AD carry. Carzzy and LeBron, he probably gets support of his choosing. Like, that team could be a fucking beast team as well. So, I mean, I just think that if your org is going to fucking throw you under the bus like this, being loyal to them just seems fucking wrong to me.
I will also say that as an AD, like, if you're an AD carry player, you're like the running backs of League of Legends, where you're pretty replaceable, I would say, overall. The staying power of AD carries, I would say, is generally lower than most other positions if you're a pro player. So if you have a shot to get the payday as ADC, I would take it.
All right. Well, there you have it for Mad Lions as we close the chapter on their 2021. And finally, yesterday's match, all I wanted for my birthday was a Cloud9 win, and we didn't even get one of those. They got 3-0'd in the most NA fashion, right? Having an opportunity to come back, a stomp, and then a throw, right? You hit the trifecta of ways to lose games if you're Cloud9. And it just, this feels like the regular post groups conversation that we have about North America, where it's like, you got all the tools, you were in every game, and somehow you lost it. But it feels less bad because they lost it in the quarterfinals, but it feels more bad because they lost it against Gen.G, who hadn't gotten over the hump in a long time, and Cloud9 was favored.
It's just such a fucking doomed timeline. I mean, then you have like Gen.G flaming you. When Gen.G is flaming you in fucking interviews, just kill me. I just don't want to exist in 2021. It's too fucking miserable, actually.
I predicted Cloud9 to win this, and you can see why. I mean, that's the sad thing, is like, this was winnable for Cloud9. This was a very winnable series. Like, they had no business even being in game 1 after that early game, and they still managed to find ways because of Gen.G's mispositioning, like Clid stepping up on the mid lane turret, getting caught out, finding the fight in the mid lane. And Cloud9 was able to make a call that got them back in the game. And this is the weakness. This is the weakness of Gen.G. This is why they can't be trusted against actual good teams. So Cloud9, like, they were gifted that opportunity in game 1. They should have been out of it like that after that early game. And so they were lucky. They were lucky, very lucky.
It was gross. I mean, and then just the way they lost in such a North American way, where it's like, you know what? Just give Elder. It's like, you're not going to fight on the Elder really when you're like 2K down. this is what people don't understand. People will hit you with this argument where they'll be like, oh, but the Elder fight wasn't a winning fight.
Oh my God. So what was the winning fight then, idiots? Was it standing under your shattered like 3 inhibs while they have Elder and Baron? Was that the fight you were gonna win?
Yes.
They were only 20 seconds away of Elder Dragon closing, and then they're able to take in all the gold because you got Ziggs clearing things out for you. I don't know. That to me felt like an accident, though. That felt like an accident.
The North American way with 2 super minions per wave. It's like 300 gold coming in at you every single wave, and you got 3 of them. So you're really just scaling for late game. And by farming all that gold.
Yeah, I mean, look, if the game never ended, right, and it was some like Jeff Bezos like Amazon bullshit, like I can understand the investing for the future, you know, like you take a hit now in order to potentially, you know, it's like the fucking stock market, man. They're just trying to get in at the low price of, you know, we got nothing in our base, and this is when we just decide to take all the waves in. But it doesn't work in League of Legends. Fight the fucking Elder Drake. Please start fighting these drakes. I mean, this is the worst part about it is they just gave it all up, bro. They didn't even fight. In game 3, they weren't even fighting third Drake where the enemy is on. Like, this is the Drake that will give them soul point. They weren't even fighting third Drake up 5k. I don't understand how it's possible. And they're playing into a team that is not even the great team fighting team. They're the team fighting team. They're the team that has like the MF and shit, but they're just not fighting the Drake. It's too crazy.
So that game 1 with the Elder Drake that came up, and I think Perkz was on bot lane shoving out the super minion wave. I don't know if they knew that Gen.G was just pulling the trigger and doing it, but it felt like not a call. It felt like they got caught. They got caught with their pants down, and they were not talking about Elder Dragon for whatever reason, even though everyone at home knew like that's what it was.
I choose to believe that the end of this game was simply a pre-planned publicity stunt for their brand new sponsor, Bad Dragon.
No, I thought it was I thought it was for their brand new sponsor, like American Airlines or something. I thought that's what the idea was. Bad Dragon. Okay, we'll take it.
All right. Yes. Now I just looked it up too. Thanks, man. All right, you guys at home can look it up.
There you go. That's in your brain forever now. Enjoy.
I'm so upset. Oh. All right.
That's what that is. Okay. What the hell?
Exactly.
Jesus.
Anyway.
All right. Anyway. Game 2.
You're welcome, everybody.
Yeah.
Nice.
Everyone at home, thank Papa Monte for that. I'm upset. All right. Game 2. Game 2 comes through. This is where we see the Syndra go on to the side of BDD. We go Graves top. We're going to put Fudge, the Factor, on a Malphite. Poppy here to outsmart all the dashes from Graves and Lee Sin. This should be fine. No engage from Rakan. This should be fine. And I think this is when you tweeted it out, Monty, but you tweeted it out at some point. This was BDD taking over the game and a Gen.G that was very fun to watch. This was very fun for them to go, hey, this is how we win. We're going to dive top. We're going to make them TP. We're going to dive them again. We're going to get some leads here. And I don't even think they planned the leads in the mid lane. That was just perfect, just execution by BDD and Clid on the Lee Sin Syndra, punishing Perkz multiple times, just frame perfect, blowing his flash, still landing the Sonic Wave, and then just running over. The game broke. Like, that was a lot of fun to watch from this Gen.G team that we didn't expect to end games anytime within 30 minutes.
Yeah, they've been more aggressive in the early game. Like, they have been getting those advantages. I think, once again, you see the power of the Syndra-Lee Sin combination here. And I tweeted this out, but an uncomfortable fact that Dom is going to have to come to terms with is that BDD is both like he's the second highest damage percentage by percentage mid laner at this tournament, but he's the third lowest gold percentage overall. And so his efficiency has actually been extremely good. And one wonders with better itemization if it could be even better. Seriously.
Well, that's the thing is like that makes perfect sense because he's used to playing without items. So he's used to having low resources, even if he has resources that are actually just misplaced. So I actually think that this is perfect to contextualize BDD as a player. He never has any resources, and he's always pretty good. I think this is like the main reason why people hate watching BDD, because you feel like he could just be one of the best in the world if he just like read the items. I don't know, like took a literacy test. Like I don't fucking know. I don't know what he needs to do, but he needs to actually like start reading what items are good in what situations, because it is like really appalling, his itemization in every, like it's actually bad in every game, and it's always the second item. Everything is fine outside of the second item. The second item is always just this weird item, like on Syndra, like you know, you can just go Seraphs, right? Like you can just do what every other Syndra player in the world does, and they can just grab a Seraphs, and you know how much more AP you get from that than the Horizon focus every game. Like, come on, it can't be that hard. It really can't be that hard. Literally, all he needs to do is this is all he needs to do. He needs to go ShowMaker Games of Legends, and he just needs to copy the fucking builds. Like literally just some like pro builds bullshit where you just literally look and copy the builds that he gets. Oh, what does ShowMaker do? Oh, Leandri's into Void Staff? Perfect. Just do it every game. Oh, ShowMaker needs lasagnas in this game? Do it every game. Rapid fire on TF with Everfrost? Perfect. Just keep on going for these simple, easy builds. I'm so tired of seeing the way he itemizes.
And yet here he is as an unlikely potential MVP candidate. He is going to enter, if he makes finals, he is going to be in the MVP conversation. Like that's just reality. His efficiency has been very good. It's his low resources are doing a fuck ton of damage. Like he is not taking gold. He's not taking CS after 15 minutes. He is third lowest in CS after 15 behind Faker and Cryan. And yet he's doing so much more as a carry. Like a damage carry. Let me put it that way. Faker, I think, is doing a lot. He's doing a fuck ton, but he's not the one who's outputting the damage. And the eye test is also very favorable to BDD right now because he is pulling out games, especially on the Zoe, that they should lose. He is making plays. And yes, I think your criticisms of don't stand in those locations are valid criticisms, but someone's there and he's making the play. So will that happen against, a potentially good team like T1? Or I'm sorry, a good team like EDG? Probably not, would be my expectation. But so far, he has overperformed based on what I thought the level he would be at in the start of Worlds.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think that's kind of like the whole region, though. He's a microcosm of the entire region, where it's like, I mean, I think one thing that we're getting into that's actually the most annoying part is people making it seem like this was expected or that Korea was dominant this entire year, where I feel like Korea is peaking at the right times and they're clearly the best region at this tournament so far. But I think to like say that, oh, in reality, like it was just really good all year, and the only reason why it didn't look great was because they were playing against other really great teams. I just think it's completely bullshit. I mean, we saw at MSI what happened. Like,
yeah.
As someone who watched the LPL and LCK playoffs, I think it was very reasonable to think that LPL was going to come in stronger based on the most recent available set of games.
Definitely. Yeah. And I think that Korea kind of dictated the meta. I feel like Damwon coming out in their first game and just picking the Yuumi and completely shitting on FPX. I feel like that actually like mind fucked a lot of these teams. Yeah, I feel like a lot of these teams realize they're like, oh shit, like maybe the counters aren't going to work on stage.
Well, I think there have been several things that Korean teams have been doing differently that have dictated the meta. So one of them is like Damwon coming out with the Yuumi pick as like the first pick of group stage, right? And then dominating with it. The other thing has been T1's very different play style, where they're running more of these kind of supportive or global roaming mid laners, and then coupling that with the jungle poppy, which was quite surprising. Or playing, the Talon in the jungle more so than most other teams, and carrying through that. And then also their heavy reliance on Aphelios. I don't think many people would have thought that we would have seen 7 out of 9 games T1 playing Aphelios coming into this tournament. So that's been really important for them. And then the other thing is that basically Gen.G is kind of the opposite of T1, where they banned a bunch of the more common picks like the Twisted Fate in this series, and they instead have been relying on BDD playing Zoe or Azir. Like BDD really hasn't been playing a lot of the mid laners that most other people have been playing in this tournament, and they've relied on their style. So I find it interesting that, and fun, honestly, that the 3 Korean teams we have in the semifinals are all very different from each other.
Yeah, the Azir banned every time by Cloud9 in the second draft phase. It was that plus the Kennen after they got walloped by Rascal's Kennen on the flank. Okay, let's close out here this first stage with or this first review of the quarterfinals with our indictment. I guess our year in review of Cloud9 here. Cloud9.
The trial of Cloud9 begins now.
Yeah, there it is.
All right, so the crimes against humanity were committed by Vulcan. I don't know. I don't know how many counts he gets for that game 1, but that has to be some type of like. I don't even know if it would be an assault on your eyeballs or what you'd qualify that as, but like the hooks were just
Do you need
not
therapy,
there.
Dom? Do you need some therapy?
I need something. I need a new set of eyeballs is what I need, because I swear Vulcan's actually a good player. Like that's the hardest part. But people don't think he's a good player. Like most people just think he's shit now. I mean,
TSM fans think Sword Art was going to save them. So, let's put people's opinions on support players aside for a moment.
Yeah, well, I mean, I just say that Vulcan, like, he clearly had a shit game 1. Like, the game 1 was egregious. I mean, dying level 1 is Nautilus. You're playing Nautilus Ziggs into Lulu. Was it Lulu Aphelios? Yeah, I think it was Lulu Aphelios game.
Yeah.
And you're just dying level 1 like that. Like, it didn't even look like almost close. It's like, bro, you just hooked, missed it, and then died. Like, can't you just wait for the wave or some shit? And it's tough because I feel like Vulcan has now had a few of these underperformances in big moments. I think his Alistar game in the tiebreaker, the one where Perkz kind of popped off on the block, or like Perkz was inting, he was giveth, and Perkz giveth, Perkz taketh that one. I thought that was a pretty bad Alistar game from Vulcan. I mean, not only did he miss like the 5-man pull at the end of the game on the Rise ult, he has had like a couple ints where he just tried to make a play mid, died for free, wasted his ulti. Then in the other game that mattered a lot, which was the tiebreaker versus DFM, he had that Amumu game where he was just running it down with the Amumu the entire game. So he's had like a few of these really bad games, and I just really think he's better than it. And it sucks that it feels like the bot lane really let the rest of the team down in this tournament. I thought Zven and Vulcan were a lot worse than what was expected. And I thought Blabber actually had a pretty good tournament. That's the thing is, when I look at this team, most of the criticism that I saw throughout the year was against Blabber. I mean, he was getting flamed to death for this crab shit, right? Like, I thought it was funny, like it was like, I would joke, oh, look, like he's going to suicide for the scuttle crab. And I thought it was a whole joke. But then I realized halfway through, most people think that Blabber is actually just a bad player. And I think that he had a great fucking tournament. He had a great tournament overall. I mean, I think he was gapping the fuck out of Clit in some of these games. And yeah, I mean, his ball lane just didn't have his back when they needed to.
Game 2, I think, but the game broke so quickly through mid. BDD.
I mean, his mid laner like ran down the entire game. I mean, Perkz died, then BDD TP's top. I mean, his Poppy was not good, but even if his Poppy was really good, I think they're still getting stomped. I just don't think you can have that happen in this meta. You can't have a weak mid laner, a weak top laner, have the mid laner get solo killed, and then have your top laner just get 3-man dove and still play the game. I just feel like it's too doomed if this actually occurs.
I'll just throwing this out there. All players are under contract through 2023. So they're at least there for 2 more years. It is the Cloud9 way. If you play for Cloud9, you got to sign your life away for 3 years, and Jack can do whatever he wants with it. But Monte, what is your takeaway on this Cloud9 season worlds as we close the chapter on their 2021?
I think it's really hard to know what you should do with this roster unless you're a part of it, because fundamentally their issues were synergy related and not individual player. I think Dom pointed out accurately that overall Vulcan had a very underwhelming tournament, but I think that part of now the laning shit is just egregious. Like that was sad to watch in game 1 of this series. But so often, if you're talking about the Alistar examples or the Amumu examples, there was just a fundamental lack of knowledge from Cloud9 about their own win conditions at times. Like, why are you hard engaging when you have a poke comp and have position on Dragon Soul in the group stage? Like, why are you making these choices? Why are you walking in as Alistar in this situation if you don't have the proper setup? And I think for me, it was the lack of knowledge of how to close games with a variety of compositions. And it just seemed like it's interesting because G2 didn't have that problem. If we think about the Perkz iteration of G2, whether he was in mid lane, and especially I would say when he was on AD carry, was that the magic was that they could play weird shit and they would know what the win condition was, and they would outsmart you by surprising you with certain moves, putting the game into a state where it was basically impossible to have practiced for, whether it was their compositions or whether it was them doing unexpected things on the map. And then they would outplay you from this unique game state. And we just didn't see that with this iteration of Cloud9. They just couldn't close. They couldn't play to their win condition. There was some sort of communication breakdown that was happening where the individual players didn't know. They could only see their one piece of the jigsaw puzzle, and they couldn't see what the picture of the whole puzzle was. And I think that's my biggest indictment of this team this year. And I don't know how to solve that because I'm not listening to their comms. Like, I don't know what is the single biggest problem in that scenario. So it's really hard to say what you should do in this instance.
The description that you just put out there of this G2 roster with Perkz finding creative ways to come back into a game and put teams in positions they haven't practiced sounds like Game 3 Zoe. Like BDD just being like, yep, you guys haven't practiced against Zoe in a long time, and you aren't checking things correctly around Dragon.
Here's the thing, Perkz plays Zoe. They won Spring because Perkz had a game 4 with Zoe against Team Liquid where he hit the fucking $1 million bubble. Like, they know how to play with this champ. This is a Perkz champion, right? Mm-hmm. That's what's disappointing. No. This is why the problem is so fucking confusing, dGon.
I want to look it up.
The other thing is just, we talked about it before, right? It's just like players just playing bad. Like they never have these games where everyone's playing well. I mean, Game 3 is the perfect example of that. I mean, I think Zven had maybe his worst game of the entire year from that position. Well, it's like not, I would say, as like an overview of the entire game, but from like 25 minutes on, I think that you can't really have a much worse game than that. Dying on like when he's getting hit by the Zoe bubble, it's not like he just got hit by a bubble over the wall and got one shot. He gets queued by a Zoe over the wall, and while the Zoe is in her like R forward, she's throwing the bubble slowly at his face, and he didn't Gale Force it, didn't flash it. He takes it, then heals and Gale Forces and gets one shot off of it. I feel like, and then he obviously got kicked mid where they know where the Lee Sin is. They literally see the Lee Sin on a ward. Like the Lee Sin tries to flank, they see him on the ward, and then he just walks up straight and gets kicked into the whole team. And then the last fight of the game was just really weird where he's clearing bot wave alone, and then he's like trying to flank in the fight instead of just trying to regroup with his team and get like behind people so he can get a good ult off. So I would say the whole game was just like really weird from Zven, and then obviously he died at the end with both summoners up again. So I don't really know what's happening with him, but I feel like he was always the type of player that wouldn't throw those leads.
I mean, he's Mr. Consistent, right? That I think this was I don't read too much into this third game. Honestly, if you could make an argument that they lost it because of him, but also how often does that happen, right? I don't think it like Zven is.
I mean, I don't think he was that consistent this world. Like, I mean, think about the Peace series that they won 3-0, where he just like lost 2 lanes to Violet, just inting in lane. I don't know. I'm not sure if he's that consistent anymore. And he
Violet
also,
is a free agent.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure. I'm not sure.
I did want to look it up just to double check. In the spring, 9 games of Zoe were played. In the summer, 8 games of Zoe were played. It's not unfamiliar, but it is, I think, again, just an uncomfortable thing to play against once this champion gets to a certain time period in the game. But at that point, Zoe was still like going
Zoe. I mean, Zoe's an old champion. Like at this point, it's been competitive for 3 years now. So 4 years now, I guess. At this point, like you know this stuff inherently. Don't stand right next to walls where Zoe is. Like, I mean, it just is what it is. That's all there is to it, really. So
That was my defense.
I think what's also depressing, and this is yet another indictment on this format, but Cloud9 managed to make it to quarterfinals and end the tournament 3-7, which is the worst overall record of any team in the playoffs. And like, if you should be winning more than 30% of your games, and if you're making it out of groups and making it to the quarterfinals, like this was bad, especially because it's even more depressing when you think that they got unquestionably the easiest quarterfinal draw that they could have gotten.
Yeah. Yes. Yes. Okay. Yeah. I guess I'm only thinking of it from back in Group A was the group of death. They made it out of the group of death. Because I also feel bad that the other teams didn't make it out going 3-3. Right.
Yeah, but every team not named Dom1 played like absolute shit in that group. Like, if anything, dGon, you're frankly just making more ammunition against Cloud9, because the fact that Rogue and FPX underperformed so much, nobody stepped up into that void. Like, it was a shit show, and Cloud9, Rogue, and FPX, no one was capable of stepping up.
That's true. All right, the hopium is out. Off season is abound, and we'll see what the LCS and Cloud9 do moving forward. That was the group stage, everybody. Or not the group stage, the quarterfinals, everyone. We've got ourselves some picks that we got to make here in our predictions, but only after we do God or Dog. A reminder that the jungle is presented by DJ Esports. The first 10 players to reach 60,000 DJT in their DJE wallet will win 50 XRP. So act fast. Use the promo code DJ5050, deposit 50, and get 50 USDT back. Limited to the first 20 people. Sign up now so you don't miss out. Time for God or Dog of the quarterfinals. Let's get to it. Dom, you're first. Who were your God? Or who was your God? And who was your dog?
Oh man, it hurts for me to say, but my God is gonna be BDD. It's gonna be BDD.
We did it. We converted him. The efficiency, Dom. The damage per gold through the roof on BDD. The clutch
Plus the
playmaking
potential.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think his play was really good, especially game 2. I thought he played really well. Clawed them back into the game 3. And yeah, I just thought he was the best performing player. Well, maybe not the best performing player. I think it's pretty hard to criticize like Canyon or ShowMaker. I feel like those are also valid options. But I picked ShowMaker last week, and I picked him maybe 2 weeks ago. I'm not sure. I think I picked him one of the last 2 weeks, so I didn't want to pick him again. And yeah, I just thought that, I'd normally shit on Gen.G quite a bit, so I got to give them credit where it's due, even if I don't want to give them credit.
The conversion. Plus the other church has already been.
No, you'll see me like next week if they lose to EDG, he's my fucking dog. It doesn't even matter. He'd pop off all the games. I'm just gonna be like, yeah, he's my dog. Gen.G, they're exposed finally. The biggest frauds of the tournament lucked into an easy quarterfinal match versus Cloud9. I will throw my own org, myself, everyone under the bus just to shit on Gen.G.
All right, well, there you have it. God this week. Who knows what next week? Who's your dog, brother?
My dog is Willer, who I talked about earlier. I mean, I don't think you can have a worse series than that. Like, I mean, if I jumped into that series right now, having not played the game in 4 months, I think it's hard to go 0-12-1, man. Like 0-12-1 amongst 3 games. Like, especially on those champions. Like, he's playing Zven and Olaf. He's not playing these really insane mechanical champions where you're just feeling off on the day. You start losing confidence in yourself. I mean, it was one for the ages. It was a historically terrible performance that Willer had. Really exceptional. And I think it was really strange too that they didn't decide to put him on Viego at any point, because that was his champion. That was like half the reason that Hanwha Life even was able to get out of that group. And yeah, they just decided to put him on Zven Olaf only.
All right, well, there's Doms too. Who you got, Monte?
So I'll start with my God, which is probably one of the reasons why Willer did so well, which is the ultimate god of League of Legends, Faker. And I think it's hard to be Willer when Faker is putting deep wards in your jungle 24/7 and basically just roaming all over the map outside of lane. I think it takes a special kind of player to be of Faker's legacy, and he is effectively, as I understand it from talking to people, like the head coach of T1 right now. Basically, when they fired all their coaches, Faker has taken over from the inside of the organization. He is the one who's dictating a lot of the strategy, which means that he is choosing to play this way. which is unique. And he's putting a lot of faith in younger players on his roster, very young players, in fact, to carry the game. And if you are a superstar level player, even if you are arguably past your prime like Faker is, it takes, I think, a unique temperament to want to pass the ball to the rookie, right? And he is doing that. So I think it's, people might criticize him statistically because you look at him and you say he's doing very low amount of damage overall, but he's also not taking any resources. That's the magic of what's going on right now, is that he hasn't been doing very much damage at all. He's like third lowest at this tournament at 20.4%, but he also is taking like the least amount of gold of any mid laner. So he's been playing a lot more supportive champions. He's been playing to contain players like Chovy with counter picks in the mid lane, and he's been activating his young teammates. So I think this is a really fascinating performance by a player, and you don't see this very often in League of Legends. I'm trying to think of another time where you would see a star player play so selflessly in this game, and it's few and far between.
Like the Bjergsem Galio days of Season 8, where they would just put him on Galio and lose every game, but at least he would die for the team.
Yeah, the thing is, Faker's only lost one game at this tournament. So he's playing a style that
and TSM's lost 0. What's your point?
That's true. You got me. But yeah, it's like I think Faker is deserving of a lot of praise for this performance, and I'm very, very curious to see what this matchup with Damwon will bring out of T1.
All right. Well, an old god, still a good god, one of the best gods that we've ever had in Faker. Who's your dog?
For me, it's got to be Rascal. I think that I'm going to pick a player that is going to be playing in the semifinals, because this guy has like a champion puddle, as far as I can tell. Like, they had to substitute in Birdall to actually be able to play carries like Aurelia and Camille. And given the priority of Aurelia within this tournament, I think you telegraph very heavily what you're doing if you put Birdall into the game. And that's a big problem overall for Gen.G. Rascal has been a non-factor in a meta where top laners are just incredibly important right now. He really hasn't done anything in spite of the team winning. He has the lowest kill participation on his team of any top laner except for DWG, which we can understand given what happened to DWG in a lot of those rogue games and DWG's kind of poor play overall. He's just a big void. Like, he's not doing badly. He's doing okay in the laning phase, but he really is a non-factor in a lot of their wins. And while he's not actively losing the game, by the time you get to semifinals at Worlds in a top lane focused meta, you actually have to start doing things that will help your team win. And I just see virtually no playmaking potential from this guy.
All right. Well, there you have it. Our two experts. Here's mine. We'll go back to Gen.G for God. Although BDD, I think, was great in that dumpstering of Perkz in game 2, I think it's Clid for the point that, Dom, you brought up. It was the killer instinct that the West is missing. And Clid, again, regardless of if it's his call or not, had multiple clutch smites when the team needed it and closed out the game on Cloud9. And I think it's that kind of stone cold playmaking and just existing in the moment that is necessary for a team to get over the hump. They are going to run up against JJ, who has been in form. But I think watching that series and seeing that happen while Cloud9 gave great punches and counter punches and still seeing Clid to shut the door like that was that to me was just like, wow, that was great. Everyone's going to talk about BDD and kind of making a lot of these plays, but I think Clid just being the right guy at the right spot every time, it's difficult to be that person. And so I think Clid getting that done was a big thing. And the dog for me was Mr. 6 CS per was it per minute. Crying, who dropped all the way down to Annie. Monte liked it, called it unique. Sorry, you called it unique. I don't know if you said you liked it, but you called it unique. To me, that's... And maybe the team's imposing it on him, but when they picked Annie, I was like...
His job was to use Predator to run into the side lanes.
Why is that your mid lane star player's job? Like, why is that your job?
I mean,
you have Shahu in the top lane.
You're asking the wrong questions. Why was this team created to move Xiaohu into the top lane in order to put Cry in mid? This is truly RNG is just a crime of general management. That is the problem.
Well, I mean, I think that, like, Cryan was supposed to be a hyped mid laner. It's like he devolved into DeMonte, like Chinese DeMonte, but like he started as
it's so true.
He started as like somebody who was like, I mean, it's like Palafox or something. It's like a FlyQuest being like, Palafox is gonna be the future, and then you start like watching him play. You're like, you know what? Maybe Triple is better than him. You know, like it's just one of those things where you see upside and you start playing. But I also think it's like a kind of how RNG functions. Like, I don't think Cryan is as bad as people think he is. I just think that like a lot of the time he just needs to actually get stuff done, because if he's not getting stuff done, it feels like the team just implodes. Like, he can't just sit there and farm like other mid laners can and, you know, like hope the game will be stable. Like, the team is just going to bleed out. But okay, so I was leaving Canyon up for you guys, but you guys didn't want Canyon, so fuck BDD. He's not my god anymore. I'm changing it. Canyon's my god. Like, we can't have two people from Gen.G after that series be called gods.
I was literally being like, all right, damn, I guess we're going with no one on Damwon. That's all right. Like, you can keep picking Canyon. The same god if you want. You can go ShowMaker again if you want. There's no rules on this. I just feel like
it's boring if I go ShowMaker again.
All right.
I'll go Canyon on this one.
All right, Canyon, as BDD has been dismissed, we'll get to see and he's already been put on the potential dog list if Gen.G lose. So we'll see next week where BDD ends up. That has been Dog God of the quarterfinals. All right, prediction time. We're down to the 4 teams, the best 4 teams according to how Riot structures their tournament format left in the 2021 season. 3 Korean squads, and EDG that has outlasted all other LPL teams. Let's start at the top of the bracket. That is EDG against Gen.G. So let's send it on over to you, Dom. How do you see this playing out?
EDG just wins. I mean, I just, the one thing that we didn't talk about during EDG that I wanted to bring up was like how awkward they look with Yuumi. Like, even though they did win games with Yuumi, it just doesn't look like EDG's style at all. They're so uncomfortable playing it, and I hope they don't get sucked into like permanently playing Yuumi. I would rather just have them ban it and just play how they normally play. But yeah, I think EDG should be the better team. I think if Gen.G actually wins this will go down as potentially the most boring world final in the history of the game. Like, I don't remember another team as like, because I mean, if Gen.G plays against T1 or Dom1, which one of those teams is actually, could you see ever losing to Gen.G?
I don't know. IG Fnatic did exist, so
yes, I was gonna throw that out.
I mean, I would say that was way more hype coming in. Like Fnatic didn't have like that easy of a run. Like, number one, Fnatic had won 2 games. I was winning the head-to-head versus IG when they got to that point. So I feel like going into it, it's just like it's a situation where people thought Fnatic could legitimately win. They won when the teams played against each other at Worlds, whereas
that's true. That's true.
Gen.G T1, Gen.G Dom1, it feels like I've been watching Gen.G. I mean, obviously Gen.G beat T1 in spring, but like that wasn't even the same T1. That was like different players on the fucking team at that point anyway. That was like when Closer was playing half the games for T1. So I don't know.
That's when T1 was drunkenly selecting names out of a hat for every new game that they played.
Yeah, exactly. So it doesn't even really count to me. Like, it's like, okay, yeah, you beat that version of the team. Like beating.
That was when there was hope that Gumayushi would come to NA.
I mean, look, that's like beating TL when they had Jenkins in instead of Alfari. It's like, oh, who cares? Like, literally, who cares?
Come on, man. Leave Bobby J alone. Why is Bobby J catching a stray in this one, dude?
He objectively deserves it, but that's fine. Speaking of terrible GMing. That right there was some fucking terrible GMing pulled by Team Liquid.
And now makes this whole year kind of like a what could have been scenario. Damn, unlucky. I guess not unlucky. Bad management. What you got here, Monte, for this matchup?
For the love of God, can EDG please win this game? I agree with Dom. Like the finals are going to be an absolute tragedy. If you if you're EDG and you can't beat Rascal, like Rascal is basically just lighting money on fire in the top lane. Remember how I said that BDD is super efficient because he doesn't take any gold? Did you wonder where that gold went? It's going to Rascal.
I was going on
by the
Ruler.
way.
I thought it was going on Ruler.
He's taking 30% of his team's gold to do fucking nothing. So if you can't beat that in a top lane focused meta, if you can't beat Gen.G, who fails basic macro principles in the around late game objectives when you are potentially the best team fighting team in the world in the mid to late game, I don't even know what to say to you. So I think this one is a huge stylistic canyon between these two teams, and I think EDG should absolutely be winning this, and I pray that they do because I want to actually watch that final.
All right. Well, not a lot of hope there for the Gen.G fans that got excited for how they played, and even Monte, who gave them praise, knows something. Doesn't want to see him win.
I think Cloud9 should have beaten Gen.G, but I didn't get that. So I better fucking get EDG beating Gen.G because they can't keep getting away with it.
Here, you ready for this? I think TL should have beaten Gen.G. That's where I think Gen.G should have been dropped off in the fucking group stage.
They did. They beat him once.
They should have beaten him again. They should have beaten him when it mattered. That's my point. Fuck.
Could have put in Bobby J. How far I didn't play well that game. Just throwing that out there. All right.
I think Alfari was checked out before World started.
He was already looking forward. He was looking forward to having that conversation with Perkz and Vitality.
Yeah, he was in the Blue Lagoon with Perkz talking about Vitality. Is what was going on there.
Let's trade this blue for yellow.
The odds go up if we do badly, right? So that they'll trade us away. We'll be more affordable to Vitality, right? There you go.
All right, let's move on over to the next matchup, the big one, worthy of a finals itself. It's T1, it's Damwon. Where do you draw the line on this one, Monte?
Look, I think this is the actual finals. This should be the best match of the tournament based on what we've seen. My hope is that this series turns into a really interesting back and forth where I hope Damwon is able to snap T1 out of the style that they've been playing and been successful with so far at Worlds so that we actually get to see some like faker carry games. I want to see if T1 has alternative strategies to what they've shown so far because I don't feel like they've been overly challenged to this point in time. And I'm hoping that they've got some secret sauce like, the Rocks Tigers support MF or some really crazy shit that they're going to pull out or a vintage carry faker performance that we get to see in this series. Should be really good. I think as a clash of styles, it's going to tell us a lot as to who has the better read on the meta because they're playing really differently in that regard. And yet both teams are getting their number 1 and number 2 in terms of early gold leads. So they've been doing it differently, but the effects on the early game and the effects of the snowballing have been similar when it comes to gold. So I'm very excited. I do think Damwon takes this just because in another year, this might be a different story, but I think it's a lot to ask of Kana and Owner when you're playing against Canyon and Khan, and the level of experience that those players have, I think is going to be a huge difference maker in this series.
It'll be a fun, matchup to watch there, the youth against the experience. And we'll see what happens there. Dom, what you got?
I have Damwon winning, but I hope it doesn't happen. I think that the most exciting possible finals would be like T1 versus EDG. Personally, what I think, because you have like all the storylines. You have Scout versus Faker. You have Faker potentially winning another world championship. You have China versus Korea. Like you have just everything built into that one match. But yeah, I just think Damwon's the better team. I don't think they're unbeatable. I think that there's definitely a chance that Gumayusi could take over this game. The problem is that generally what we saw in LCK was that like Ghost doesn't get digged down really by like by 80 carries the same way. Like he just kind of can exist and always be relevant. But I feel like Gumayusi should, based on what we've been seeing at this tournament, be getting the leads. And yeah, I just feel like if they use them well and you're winning bot lane this hard and you're picking things like Lulu Aphelios, if he's getting his hands on stuff like that, or if they get Ezreal Yumi or MF Yumi, one of these picks, like I feel like he could really carry this series and like make a real name for himself, like kind of like start becoming one of those like new LCK legends. So I definitely think it's winnable for T1. I just think that Dom1 seems too strong, and I just don't see. I think that Dom1 also has like the mental game to just have this like massive advantage. It just feels like they have that. It's like in Europe when you played against G2 in previous years, where it just felt like almost unwinnable no matter what they ended up doing. I know Fnatic won that one series where it was like double elimination. I know Mad won the series in those double elimination too, but it always felt like when it mattered the most, G2 was just going to come in and just be the better team. I get that feeling with Dom1 in Korean matches. I feel like they'll just dominate everyone else from Korea. They've just been winning for way too long, and they're just way too good at all the clutch moments when it matters. So I got Dom1 and EDG.
All right. A Chinese and a Korean finals for both of y'all. Again, the hope for T1 to make it there. And as you said, the storylines abound across I think any combination of the teams that make it on through, right? If you get an all LCK final, Gen.G back, you get Gen.G T1, that would be sick. Gen.G against Damwon, it's Ruler's return. I think the Riot will find a way to make it interesting. That's what I
really, because they've been barely doing any storytelling at all at Worlds, and they haven't done any content. So I don't think they will find a way to make it interesting. That would be my prediction. They literally haven't
make it interesting. I'll make it interesting on the Pick'em show. All right. Me,
there
Tyler,
you go.
Wood, and Yankos.
That's the content they've been focusing on. Give it to the people.
They haven't focused on, and like, think about all the storylines that you've had so far at this event that they've just dropped the ball and like, here's a stick storyline for you. Faker Scout, no interviews, no content, nothing. They're in the same group. Like that's a potential finals matchup. Like the ball has been dropped hugely, I think, in that regard, that there simply has not been a big deep dive into a lot of cool storylines that are happening at this event. There's been virtually no like edited content on the broadcast at all.
I think you're right. Actually, I know you're right. They've definitely hopped right into like breaking down the matchups, a lot more analysis than they have storytelling this year's World. So now that there's 4 teams, less teams running around, they're in the same venue. Hopefully, they'll be able to focus on a little more than a cool music video with Armit looking like he punched the shit out of who did he punch? It looked like, was it ShowMaker?
Armit by the punching. Way, as somebody who spent years doing Muay Thai, I can't watch that like cringe shadow boxing stuff from people who have no idea what they're doing. It's terrible.
Yeah. You see Armit versus Khan, they're like,
oh, it's Khan. Yeah, that's what it was. It's Khan.
Khan versus, I mean, it's like, it's Khan now too. That's as far as I'll say. It's just Khan now too, where it's just like he just doesn't look like the boxing type. I don't know, for some reason. I can see Clid being like a boxer, you know, like he's kind of got that boxing look about him. Like Clid looks like he could take a punch. I feel like Khan doesn't. And, you know, like maybe if you put Clid in there versus Perkz, it would look a little bit better. That's all I'm saying.
But, yeah. You know, I've done a lot of shoots. I've done a lot of shoots with pro gamers and had them do a lot of things. And I don't know how whoever was filming that was like, yes, this is it. And then edited it together and was like, nailed it. That's my question. Like, where was the breakdown, the aesthetic breakdown that occurred there, where that was the decision where they're like, yep, got it. This is what we want to put out there.
I mean, I think I always felt like as a pro player, it felt kind of cringe, like trying to be like, I mean, you just have a bunch of people that are physically out of shape, just trying to be like super physical. I mean, if you have the players for, like, if you got Broxa in finals, yeah, do something that like makes them look like a fucking beast. But like, if you just don't have those players, I feel like it just looks cringe. Everyone trying to be like super like cool and like strong and like all these poses and shit. It just doesn't look natural. Doesn't look like anything the players even want to do. It feels like they're kind of embarrassed even doing it themselves. So I just say it's not normally the move.
All right, well, we'll get away from physical fighting montages and hopefully into some historic montages of these teams and the storylines that are there. God, man, you guys always you're cutting down the storytelling they're trying to do, which was like the games are great. NA's the gap is closing. They made it out of groups.
And then an LPL match, like that was what it was. It was 3-3-0s in an LPL match. Nice. Great.
All right, it was a bad decision, bad angle there by some of the video team, but they'll be able to pick it up here, and hopefully those games will be good. All right, fact of the week. This is winnable. This is doable. LCK went 6-0 against the West. When was the last time LCK went undefeated in the quarterfinals against the West?
It wasn't 2013. It wasn't 2014. It wasn't 2015. It could have been 2016. I don't remember the exact results of that one. I think Dom might be right. I think Dom might be right. I will take a flyer on 2017 though.
Okay. All right. 2016, 2017 locked in. Let's look at 2017. 2017, the teams that made it out to the quarterfinals, SKT against Misfits. So obviously that was a great series, 3-2. So not undefeated. And then the two Korean teams ended up playing against each other. That was Longju and Samsung Galaxy. 2016, we'll pull that one up. 2016, Rocks Tigers makes it out against EDG, so part of the East. 3-1 for Rocks Tigers. SKT makes it out against RNG against the East, 3-1.
So I do have an answer for this, which was that they did go 6-0 in semifinals against the West in 2015.
That's right. That's true. That is correct. But I asked for the quarterfinals, and I said undefeated, and that is correct. It is Samsung Galaxy goes 3-0 against Cloud9. Nice. That was the only Korea versus the West matchup there. Everything else, there was always a game or two that got pulled back.
It wasn't 6-0. It was a 3-0 instead.
I asked. I asked undefeated. I said I gave you the facts for 6-0, and then I asked for undefeated.
Okay, that's why. All right, that's fair then. But they did go in 2015. They did go 6-0 against the West to make the first all Korean World Final.
That's correct. That was against Fnatic. It was Coup Tigers and OG Niles getting stopped by SKT. I remember that one. I threw a watch party in Northern Virginia.
So I didn't know that. Dom was right, but I knew a different fun undefeated versus the West fact.
Yeah.
For the
that was good.
Round of the tournament.
That was good. All right, that'll close it up here for this episode of The Jungle. Thank you to Dexerto, DJ Esports for putting this on for us. And again, we'll be back after the semifinals to break down all the action and set you up for the finals of the 2021 League of Legends World Championship. See you later.